Welcome to class. I'm Trevor, and I post D&D videos every week on Wednesdays. In this video, I wanted to focus on the what and why when it comes to D&D 5th edition. There are a lot of videos on how to play 5th edition, especially for beginners, and I might even make one myself, but I think before we learn the how, we need to know why we want to bother playing a game like this, especially a game as potentially complicated or daunting as D&D can be, or any really tabletop RPG can be. And before we get to that, we need to know what it is, right? So Dungeons & Dragons is a tabletop role-playing game, and I get the best description that I could ever find for it is like playing with your imagination. It is like being a child again, except there's dice involved. I didn't use dice very often when I was a child, but I remember vividly like playing with my friends and acting like we were characters from our favorite book or movie or whatever. And it was just unabashed, enjoyable fun. And then as I got older, things became more constrained and more limited and more focused. And I mean, to use video game terminology, more grindy, right? Like I remember playing RuneScape growing up and going through the motions of playing a game like that. I'm not knocking it. It's a blast and it's mindless entertainment. But there's something about a role-playing game where you're sitting around a table socializing with your friends, and it's I mean, unfortunately indescribable given that I'm making a video on it, right? But it's an improvisational, dice-based imagination game. And you and your group of players, you and your friends sit down and tell a story together, and you roll dice to see how that story plays out. And it's seriously the most fun that I can have spending my free time. Now, it has a lot of negative stigma associated with it. I mean, I grew up, I've been a nerd my whole life, and I thought at times that D&D was a step too far. Oh, that was too nerdy for me. That's what the super nerds do. And I was a class down from that. I had more respect. I was wrong. I was unabashedly wrong. And I just needed to start playing in the right environment. Because if you play in the wrong environment, it can leave a bad taste in your mouth. There are plenty of horrible D&D experiences or talks out there. And I want to avoid that, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to start making these videos, because I want people to play and to feel comfortable running a game, and I want to make sure that there are fewer bad tables or fewer bad experiences like my first experience was, right? Let's go through my list, right? This is YouTube, so I wrote a numbered list. These are not in any particular order, except number one is kind of an umbrella that all of the rest fall under. And the biggest thing is that it's fun. It's a good time. It's interactive and it's enjoyable. And unlike, say, going to a movie where you're parallel playing with your friends, or you're not even playing, you're just all experiencing the same thing. And maybe you'll like debrief and talk about it afterward. At least that's what my friends and I do. You're directly involved with your friends or your table the entire time you're playing a game like D&D. And unlike other board games, think of more like cliche board games like Monopoly or Sorry or things like that, where there are a lot of constraints about what you can do. There's so much freedom in a game of D&D, or really any tabletop game, but this is primarily going to be about D&D. Your only bounds are the rules from the rule book, kind of, and your imagination. And that's just freeing. Now, it does have downsides. It can lead to analysis paralysis. It can be overwhelming. But once you kind of flex those muscles and get over that, I've never had more fun hanging out with my friends than I do when we're playing D&D. The second reason, right, is improv, right? It is creativity. It is, like I said earlier, it's the kind of feeling of being a child again, that innocence and that unabashed just freedom to express what you're feeling and who you are and all of that, or who you aren't. And that we don't get that a lot. I feel like as we grow up, we are told that we need to behave a certain way or do things. There's a more strict like set of rules, and D&D lets you break those things down. That kind of goes into my next point, which would be number 3. I think it helps build empathy. I'm an English teacher, and I'm a big reader and writer, and I love learning about other people's stories. And D&D is a way to live someone else's story obviously in a contained way. I'm never going to say that it will replace the experiences or acts as a substitute for the experiences that someone actually goes through, but it gives at least a taste of it. And I think that that is invaluable, right? You learn so much about yourself and about other people's struggles and experiences by, I don't know, acting like an orc. It's just wild. Number 4 would be mental exercise. It's a way to stay sharp and witty, and that's a big thing in my friend group. We're always trying to like crack jokes and make puns and not one up each other, but just we're always trying to get the word in or make everybody laugh, make each other like smile, especially now, right? And D&D is a way to keep up that mental acuity and stay on top of, I don't know, that, like, I don't want to compare it to school, right? It's literally my job, but also a bad experience for a lot of people. But there is something about stretching those mental muscles because there is so much freedom, right? Unlike Monopoly, where you're just going to go through the motions, or unlike even a game like Skyrim, where you're going to, I only use that because that's a RPG that's on basically everything, including refrigerators. Like, yeah, you can do a lot, and there's a rich narrative, and a lot of the other things on this list are checked off by a game like that. It's not as freeing. You can't just reject what's presented and choose to do something else. You're not interacting with other people. And I think that all of those things help kind of stretch and build those mental muscles that are invaluable and that are core aspects of being human, right? Sitting down and socializing with friends, even if it is in a fictional world where 3 of your friends are variant humans and 2 of your friends are elves and one's a goblin, it doesn't matter. You're still interacting with each other and learning these ever important life skills, right? And that brings me to my final point. It's socialization. I've always played at a physical table rather than on a digital space. It's just my preference. Obviously, that has been a lot harder lately. But even when it's not like in-game actual socialization, talking about the game afterward, the sense of community. I'm making these videos because of YouTubers that inspired me. I'm a forever DM, and that in some ways could be lonely, but it's also the opposite, where I feel such a sense of camaraderie and community because there are so many people out there creating resources and helping each other out when it comes to like developing stories and making this game even more rich, right? There's no substitute for this that I've experienced. And I'm not saying it has to be 5th edition exactly. This is really about tabletop role-playing games in general. But I want that I want the stigma to be broken down, and I want people to understand that, yeah, the rule books might be daunting or they might seem daunting, but if you ever went outside with your friends and just played pretend, then you're halfway to playing D&D already. Hopefully this made D&D a little bit less daunting, a little bit more reasonable. I know I didn't go into all of the traditional like character creation and all of that, but I wanted just to talk about a brief rundown of what it is and why you should bother learning all that other stuff. That other stuff is way more complicated, right? And we'll get there, but this is why all of that is worth it, right? Be safe, make smart life choices.